The European Union is committed to achieving climate neutrality by 2050, with road transport playing a significant role in this endeavour. When will there be a ban on the sale of new CO2-emitting cars, including petrol and diesel-driven cars? Jan Burdinski hopes to see more focus on renewable hydrogen and fuel usage.
Welcome, Jan Burdinski, former automotive executive.
Thanks for having me.
Can you please give us a brief summary about what this is about and what it would mean for Europe?
Well, this is the European Union as well as many others, but Europe certainly has been a leader in this development, has mandated the automotive industry to limit the emissions, especially emissions of carbon dioxide. Started with a level for 2015, then there was 130 grams, then came down 95 grams in 2020, 2021, and then has further slashed the emissions, leading to a possible ban of combustion engines in 2035, as was agreed by European Parliament and the European Council during this mandate of the European Commission. That puts a lot of people into alarm mode, but there's hope on the horizon. 2026 will see a revision of the bill on passenger cars emissions, and chances are that the next commission to be elected after the June elections will be a little bit more automotive friendly and might look into the combustion ban in 2035 again, and ideally loosen this up a little.
If this plan were to continue, how does EU plan to achieve climate neutrality by 2050? And what role does road transport play in this goal?
I mean, transport emissions are significant, and thereby this should be one of the key priorities of the European institutions to slash carbon emissions, until they reach net zero in 2050. Ideally, a little bit beforehand, so that there's some room for adjustment. What is important on this path, that we use the best technologies that are out there. And this is not what the European Parliament, especially the European Parliament, partly the Commission also has done in the past. They have put an emphasis basically on battery electric vehicles as the only way possible to slash down emissions so quickly. Like no other, certainly the combustion engine cannot do that if there's no renewable fuels, and also other options like the fuel cell electric vehicles cannot contribute enough yet because there's not enough infrastructure for it. But infrastructure is generally a big problem for the entirety of the path down to zero.
And what would the emission reduction targets set by the EU for cars advance by 2030? What does it compare to the levels of 2021?
I mean, for the levels of 2021 is an average consumption for a combustion engine car of like 3 liters, and in 2030 it has to be an average of 1 liter. And there's not a single combustion engine car that can do that. That means you either make the switch entirely to a battery-driven car, be it a pure battery-driven car that is being charged by a plug, or be it a fuel cell electric car where the electricity is created on board in a fuel cell, and that is powered by hydrogen. Some cars in 2030 might still have a mix, which means they have both a combustion engine and a battery electric engine on board. That of course adds extra weight and extra cost for the consumers, which is not really ideal.
And can you explain how this would affect sales of new CO2 emitting cars with the deadline till 2035?
This is the big Pandora's box that everyone is looking at, and no one is really willing to open it. At the moment, we see the average price of battery electric vehicles being around 50,000 euros. 50,000 euros for you and me is probably a lot of money, and not everyone can afford these kind of vehicles. Entry-level combustion engine vehicles start at 10, 12,000 euros. And what is necessary is that zero-emission vehicles also come down in the price tag to maybe 17, 18,000 to be competitive, and also not to include the less fortunate part of society from individual mobility.
And keeping with what you were saying, how does the EU plan to address the concerns of affordability for people?
Well, they are hoping that the price of battery electric vehicles will come down just as the price for computers has come down. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the case, as you know, with the rising share of battery electric vehicles, the demand for essential metals like lithium, but also cobalt and nickel, will increase. And so there's the price tendency that we see in the IT sector, we will not see in the automotive sector in a similar level, which means electric vehicles will always be more expensive. Considering this, and also considering the amount of raw materials you need to put into these batteries, and the source where they come from, it's basically China or China-controlled Africa. This is not putting Europe in a very good position, and thereby we might want to use these next 5 years, the next term of the European Commission, to look into other opportunities on what we can do. And one of the things that has always been on the agenda, but that was rejected by the last parliament, is the massive creation of renewable e-fuels that are also zero-emission fuels that come from bio waste, but that could also be produced through green hydrogen, and that have to be scaled up so that this fuel becomes price competitive. After all, what the European Union has done is always legislating on new cars. Globally, we have 1.4 billion cars on the road. And no matter what kind of regulation and legislation we are adopting on the European level, these cars will not go away. And the more expensive new cars become, the longer these old cars will be on the road. And therefore, creating an opportunity by offering these 1.4 billion cars a renewable fuel is one of the options that I believe is very much needed. And the uptake of green hydrogen production that we see in Northern Africa, in the Gulf regions, and then also in other parts of the world is very promising on reaching this goal.
So you mentioned batteries. How has EU planned to approach legislating battery recycling, as if you ban combustion engines, we'll have more batteries for the electric cars? What is the approach for recycling and some kind of natural process for this?
The European Union has agreed and rightfully agreed that all batteries have to be recycled at some point. And with current technologies, it is possible to recycle probably 98% of that, 98% of the existing batteries. It is not cheap, but it's worthwhile because we only have this one planet, and just the sheer volume of vehicles being sold. If they all have a huge battery that will drive them 300-400 kilometers nonstop, this is creating, otherwise it's creating a massive waste problem. Plus, we need the lithium, we need the cobalt, we need the nickel and other precious materials like palladium, etc., and these rare earth metals. We need that many times, and we cannot afford to just put this on the dump and let it rot there.
Could you also describe other initiatives aimed at reducing emissions, for example, for planes and ships? And as you said, increasing renewable fuel usage, promoting renewable hydrogen.
This is for planes especially. You need there's some experiments with battery powered planes and also with hydrogen powered planes. But for the plane usage that we are used to, that we currently are in need, there's only one option, and that is kerosene, which means you have to produce renewable kerosene. You can do that through green hydrogen. And this is something that needs to be scaled up for ships. The same applies. You could run ships with huge fuel cell systems. And to some extent, new ships are being powered by liquid natural gas at the moment, which is much better than what older ships have been using. And this is the leftovers of the refinery process, heavy oil. This is the dirtiest and ugliest stuff that you could possibly burn. And that is something we certainly don't want. Just like for shipping, just like to put this in perspective, the 10 dirtiest ships produce as much emissions as the entire the entire car sector globally. That's a lot. And this is where you could save a lot of emissions and make our planet a little greener.
Does the EU put focus on this question as well?
Yes, but for them, regulating the car industry was let's say the low-hanging fruit. It's easier to regulate. There's more people buying a car than people buying a ship or a plane, and therefore progress can be made quicker. Planes fly for 50 years, ships swim for maybe even longer, and while you can probably replace the powertrain in a car, you cannot just replace a powertrain in a ship. You have to break the ship apart to take the interior out, and so this is whatever you put into a ship is a very long-term process that you have to take into account.
So what does the future hold for car drivers in the EU with these goals in place?
This is, let's say, the real case is we will have a major emphasis on battery electric vehicles simply because they are the only ones to match the current regulation, which means that the price of cars will tremendously go up. We will see a lot of public charging poles that have to be created at major cost for the public. Likely there's still not going to be enough charging opportunities for car drivers to have a real convenient drive and to always, see that they will not be stranded somewhere. When you look at the major traffic jams that you see in summer when everyone is on holidays and going to Italy and Spain and Greece, and people are sitting in their cars with the air condition on, and at some point the battery is over, then these cars stay stranded there. That is not what you want to have. But this is at the moment with what we have in regulation. The focus is on battery electric vehicles. My ideal scenario, and this is not the real case, but the best case is we open this up, we put a major emphasis on creating hydrogen opportunities for, not for urban mobility, but everything that is going a little further and everything that is a little bigger, the cars for the craftsman, but also for logistic companies. And then of course, heavy duty trucks that go many hundred kilometers. They are much better suited if they're running on hydrogen than using batteries. And then for the existing fleet, that also has to be taken into consideration. We should use hydrogen based renewable e-fuels that we can offer. And I do hope that the next Commission is putting an emphasis on reindustrialization across Europe and putting a lot of these manufacturing side for green fuels could be a major game changer.
Thank you so much, Jan Burdinski, former automotive executive.
Pleasure's all mine, and anytime.
Thank you. And thank you for watching RIX Europe.